They say you know when something's wrong. That some instinct deep in your gut tries to warn you like a smoke alarm before the fire. But when you've spent years loving someone, sharing a bed, building a life, you learn to silence that alarm. You don't want to believe it. You convince yourself it's just anxiety, or stress, or your own insecurities messing with your head. That's where I was before the hotel receipt. I wasn't looking to catch her in a lie. I wasn't digging through her stuff. That morning, she'd asked me if I could drop off her dry cleaning on my way to work. Said she was running late and couldn't do it herself. I told her I'd grab the receipt from her bag so I'd know which card it was charged to standard stuff. She said thanks, babe, without even looking up from her coffee. It's wild how a marriage can start to feel like routine choreography. You go through the motions, hit your marks, say your lines. Smile, nod, kiss goodbye. I remember thinking how normal that morning felt. Like nothing had changed. But when I reached into her tote bag and pulled out a folded slip of paper that didn't look like a dry cleaning receipt, the choreography fell apart. I unfolded it out of instinct. A crumpled piece of glossy paper, faintly stained by what looked like a smudge of lipstick. The Woodmere Hotel. A sleek boutique place downtown. My eyes went straight to the date, the one that turned my blood cold. Thursday. Just last Thursday. The same night she told me she had flown to Chicago for a big regional meeting. I remember that night clearly. I made myself pasta, watched a documentary, and even sent her a sleepy miss you text around midnight. She didn't answer until the next morning, claiming the meeting ran late and she crashed early. I believed her. The receipt wasn't under her name, but the surname was familiar, the same as hers. Different first name, though. Male. It could have been a relative, maybe. Or a client. Or someone else entirely. I stood in the kitchen just staring at it for a long time. My mind trying to play catch-up with what my gut already knew. I didn't go full detective. I didn't call her in a rage or flip through her bag for more clues. Instead, I walked over to the table, laid the receipt down in the center like an offering, and went about my morning as if nothing was different except everything was. When she got home that evening, she acted like everything was normal. I'd made dinner, nothing fancy, just stir-fry, and she kissed my cheek like always. She even made a joke about one of her coworkers being a disaster with spreadsheets. The performance was seamless. Then she saw it. She was halfway to the fridge when she paused. Her eyes landed on the receipt sitting quietly under a coaster like it had been waiting for her. She didn't say anything at first. Just stared. Then casually, almost too casually, she picked it up. Didn't look surprised. Didn't ask where I found it. Just unfolded it as if to confirm what it was and then gave me the kind of smile that's meant to smooth over cracks before they become craters. Oh, this? It's Rob's, she said, as if I was supposed to recognize the name. From my team. His company card wasn't working and I had to book the room for him. It's standard. We do that all the time. I didn't say anything right away. Just nodded. But my eyes must have said something because she followed it up almost immediately. I can pull up the emails if you want, she offered, breezy and unbothered. You seriously don't have to worry. That's what got me. Not just the calm, but the preparedness. Like she had a response loaded and ready before she even read what was on the paper. And the more she talked, the less I believed. I asked one question, so he stayed there alone? Of course, she said too quickly. Why would you ask that? And that's when the script flipped. I mean, she laughed softly, putting the receipt down and leaning on the kitchen island. I can't believe you're actually suspicious about this. Jack, seriously? Are we doing this now? I stayed quiet. She gave a tired sigh and crossed her arms. You've been weird lately. Like, jumpy? You didn't even ask me how Chicago went. That wasn't true. I had. Twice. She kept going. I don't know what's going on with you, but you're starting to sound really insecure. And that's not you. She was good at this. She didn't yell. Didn't panic. Just turned the spotlight back on me like I was the one whose behavior needed questioning. I felt like I was losing my mind. Doubting myself. Maybe it was a simple mistake. Maybe she did book it for someone else. Maybe I was tired. Overthinking. But deep down, something snapped. Not loudly, not all at once. More like a slow fracture forming in a frozen lake. Quiet, but impossible to ignore once you've noticed it. I laughed it off. Told her I was just surprised that it caught me off guard. She nodded and changed the subject. Talked about her coworker's baby shower next week. Made a joke about how much she hated diaper cakes. And I played along. Because I didn't want to fight. Because part of me still hoped I was wrong. But that night, as I lay in bed next to her, pretending to scroll through my phone while she dozed off, my mind kept circling back to one thing. The smile she gave when she saw the receipt? It wasn't the smile of someone caught off guard. It was the smile of someone who thought she could still control the story. After that night with the hotel receipt, nothing was the same. At least, not for me. Lauren acted like it was behind us. She moved on fast, smiling a little wider the next day, being a touch more affectionate than usual, even asked if I wanted to go out for dinner that weekend. That used to mean something. But now I saw it differently. Not kindness. Not love. Damage control. She thought she'd steered us out of the storm. But I hadn't moved on. I couldn't. That slip of paper had cracked something open inside me, and all the moments I'd ignored, all the strange shifts, the subtle lies, the little silences started rushing back in. It's a funny thing, memory. Once you know where to look, the past stops being a blur and starts becoming a map. I began replaying everything. Even things I thought were innocent. Like how 3 months earlier, she suddenly started staying late at work. Always some urgent Q4 report or a client who could only do a late call. At first, I didn't question it. Lauren was always ambitious. She prided herself on being indispensable at the office. But when late nights became a pattern and her phone started buzzing at hours that didn't make sense, something in me had stirred. Back then, I didn't ask. Didn't want to come across as needy. But now I could see it for what it was, the beginning of a double life. Then there were the changes at home. Subtle but obvious if you were paying attention. She started dressing differently. Not just for work, for everything. I'd walk into the bedroom and see her trying on outfits she hadn't touched in years. Dresses with slits. Lace tops. New perfume. And lingerie. God, the lingerie. I used to see her wear that stuff on anniversaries. Birthdays. Now she wore it on random Tuesdays, and not once did it lead to anything between us. It wasn't for me. I remember one night, maybe 3 weeks before the receipt, I came home early and found her standing in front of the bathroom mirror adjusting a pair of earrings I didn't recognize. She looked startled when she saw me. "Oh, you're back already?" I didn't think much of it then. Just smiled, kissed her on the cheek. But now, that moment plays on loop in my head. She wasn't startled because I scared her. She was startled because she wasn't expecting to be seen. I also started noticing how much time she spent outside on the balcony. She'd never been the type to care about fresh air or long phone calls. But suddenly, she'd step outside after dinner, claiming she needed to catch up with Melissa from marketing or her cousin Rachel. I overheard one of those calls by accident. It was a voice message, not a call. She was giggling. Talking fast. Whispering something about last time. Her voice was light, playful, in a way I hadn't heard in a long time. When she came back inside, her face shifted. Like flipping a switch. She was cold. Distant. Eyes glazed over, distracted. Like being with me was the interruption. And then, the name slip. That one hit different. We were in the middle of dinner. She was telling me a story about some joke at work, something about coffee orders getting mixed up, and she said, "So then Daniel said." She stopped herself. "Wait," I said. "Who's Daniel?" "Oh, I meant David," she corrected. Too quickly. "David from finance." I nodded, pretending it was nothing. But I saw the way her ears flushed. Saw the little glance toward her phone like she was double-checking a script. That name, Daniel, came back later. It was the name on the hotel receipt. I didn't mention it. I wish I had. But back then, I wasn't ready. I was still bargaining with myself, still trying to believe she wasn't capable of it. But the final straw wasn't a name, or a giggle, or a late night. It was the password. She'd never hidden her phone from me. Not once in 8 years of being together. If anything, we were careless, her phone would buzz on the couch and I'd glance at it, or mine would light up and she'd read it out loud. No big deal. Then, about 2 weeks after the hotel incident, she updated her password. She did it right in front of me, too. Sitting on the couch, typing quickly. I asked her what she was doing and she said, "Oh, work policy. IT made us update all our devices. Security stuff." I didn't push. Just nodded. But that night, I tried the old password. Didn't work. The next morning, I tried again. Still locked. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I was mad she changed it, but because of what it meant. She was putting up walls. She was locking me out. When I finally confronted her gently, carefully, she brushed it off with a smile. "It's not about you," she said. "It's just standard protocol. Everyone had to do it." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But the woman I married would have handed me the new passcode without me even asking. The woman I married didn't keep secrets. That's when the shift became undeniable. I stopped pretending. I started paying attention. I noticed how often she took her calls in the car, claiming bad reception in the house. I noticed how she started carrying her phone everywhere, even into the shower, claiming she used it for music. I noticed how she smiled less with me, laughed less, but looked radiant when she was texting someone. The space between us grew wider with every day and she didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. I started having trouble sleeping. Not from anger, not yet. Just from the ache of not knowing. I'd lie in bed next to her and stare at the ceiling, wondering who she really was when I wasn't around. I'd watch her scroll through her phone, her face lit by the blue glow, her eyes dancing over words I'd never see. I remember one night, this one still haunts me, I reached out in bed just to touch her arm and she flinched. Not dramatically. Just a small twitch like a stranger had brushed against her. She didn't even notice. That was the moment I realized I was alone. Not in the literal sense. She was right there, inches from me. But the woman lying beside me wasn't my wife anymore. She was someone else, someone playing a part, someone who looked like Lauren and sounded like Lauren, but wasn't mine. Not really. And the worst part? I still loved her. Even after all the signs. Even as my gut screamed louder each day. I clung to the hope that maybe I was wrong. That maybe there was a version of the story that didn't end in betrayal. But deep down, I think I knew. I wasn't living with a woman who was losing interest. I was living with a woman who had already left emotionally, physically, and just hadn't said it out loud yet. And once you know that, once you really see it, you can't unsee it. I didn't go looking for proof that night. I wasn't trying to catch her in the act. I wasn't even thinking about Lauren when I pulled into the 24-hour supermarket on the edge of town. I just needed bread and paper towels. Something to do. Something normal. After days of pretending things were fine, I needed an excuse to breathe air that hadn't passed through the same tense walls of our house. I parked farther from the entrance than usual, old habit, and as I stepped out of my car, I noticed another vehicle across the lot. A sleek black SUV. Tinted windows. Familiar. At first, I dismissed it. Couldn't be hers. But then I saw the air freshener dangling from the rearview mirror, a tiny felt leaf that Lauren swore smelled like confidence, whatever that meant. She bought it on a whim one Saturday afternoon and I used to tease her about it. My stomach twisted. I ducked slightly, moving around to the passenger side of my car, pretending to look for something. That's when I saw her through the windshield in the dim interior light of the SUV. Lauren. In the passenger seat. Her face was turned toward the driver. Laughing. And then she kissed him. It wasn't fast. It wasn't rushed or impulsive like you see in movies when people are desperate or drunk or full of shame. It was slow. Familiar. Comfortable. Like she'd done it 100 times before. Her hand rested on his chest, slowly tracing the collar of his shirt. The top buttons were undone and he didn't seem to mind. She leaned into him, whispered something, and laughed again, a laugh I hadn't heard in weeks. The kind of laugh that shakes your shoulders, the kind you only give to someone who knows you in asterisk mately. I couldn't move. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until I started to feel dizzy. A hot wave of disbelief and numbness pulsed through me, starting at my fingertips and flooding my chest. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the ease of it, the softness in her body language, the way she curled into him like a home. I ducked lower behind the car window, unsure if she'd seen me. But I didn't think she had. She was too lost in him. In whatever world they'd built, one I clearly wasn't invited into. I didn't take photos. I didn't knock on the window. I didn't shout. I just sat there, stunned, the truth washing over me in slow, crushing waves. She wasn't confused. She wasn't going through a phase. She wasn't emotionally distant because of stress or work or burnout. She had someone else. Someone she kissed in parked cars at midnight. Someone whose shirt she unbuttoned like second nature. Someone who made her laugh, really laugh, while I was at home wondering why we barely spoke anymore. I must have stayed there for 10, maybe 15 minutes. Long enough to see them shift from tender to playful. He kissed her neck. She rolled her eyes and shoved his shoulder like they were teenagers. Like it was theirs, this moment, this whole world, and no one else existed. And in a way, I guess no one else did. Certainly not me. When I finally pulled away and left the parking lot, I didn't even buy the damn paper towels. I just drove. Through neighborhoods that looked exactly like ours, under streetlights that flickered above quiet roads. I didn't cry. Didn't scream. I just gripped the wheel and tried to breathe through the weight in my chest. At home, Lauren was already back. The lights were on. The TV played quietly in the living room. She sat cross-legged on the couch, scrolling through her phone like she hadn't just kissed another man in the front seat of her car. "Hey," she said casually, glancing up. "You were gone a while." I nodded. "Store was packed." She smiled. "Ugh, I believe it. Sunday night rush is the worst." And just like that, she pivoted, asked if we had any clean towels left, told me she might work from home Tuesday, mentioned a client who was being an absolute nightmare. It was seamless. Flawless. No cracks in the armor. No guilt in her voice. She thought I didn't know. And that was the moment I realized how deep it went. This wasn't some messy, emotional slip. This was calculated. Rehearsed. A story she'd polished and memorized. In the days that followed, I saw everything differently. The way she laughed at texts, then locked her phone. The sudden urgency to run to Target for one item at 9:30 p.m. The way she turned off her location services on her phone by accident. All of it suddenly made perfect sense. She still came home. Still made coffee in the mornings. Still left laundry in the dryer. But none of it meant anything. Her life had forked into two branches, and I was stuck on the one she kept around for stability. Habit. Appearances. But her heart, her body, was with someone else. I tried to imagine a version of this where she came clean. Where she sat me down and said, "Jack, I've fallen for someone else. I don't love you the way I used to." It would have crushed me. It still might have ended everything. But at least I could have respected the honesty. Instead, I got deceit. Smiles layered over silence. Kisses with no weight behind them. I remember one morning, just a few days after I saw her in that car, I made her coffee the way she liked it, 2 sugars, half an oat milk creamer. She sipped it and said, "Thanks, babe," before grabbing her bag and heading to the door. She kissed me on the cheek. I flinched. She didn't notice. That's how you know it's over. When even the lies feel like routine. That week, I started writing everything down. Not because I wanted revenge. Not even because I planned to confront her yet. I just needed to see it. All of it. In one place. Because when you're living with a lie, your mind starts splitting like you're watching someone else's life and trying to convince yourself it's yours. I filled pages. Notes about phone calls, times she came home late, fragments of conversations that felt off, inconsistencies in her stories. I wasn't documenting a relationship anymore. I was archiving an autopsy. And still, a small part of me hoped I was wrong. That maybe the man in the car was a cousin. That maybe the kiss was some bizarre misunderstanding. But that hope died the night she left her laptop open on the dining room table. I wasn't snooping truly. I just want to move it so I could set the table. But it buzzed. A new message. The preview read, "Last night was incredible. You're electric." I didn't even click it. Didn't need to. That was the nail in the coffin. I closed the laptop, walked into the bathroom, stared at myself in the mirror, and whispered something I hadn't said out loud yet. She cheated. Not maybe. Not I think. She cheated. And somehow saying it, hearing it, made it real. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't rage or cry. I just sat outside on the porch with a beer in my hand, staring at the quiet neighborhood we'd once dreamed of raising kids in. And I realized, for the first time since we moved in, I was truly alone in that house. Not because she'd left, but because she already had. I think I always thought there'd be some final blowout. You know, shouting, crying, plates thrown across the room. Years of hurt erupting all at once like a volcano finally letting go. But when the end actually came, it wasn't loud. It wasn't theatrical. It was quiet. Cold. Almost businesslike. That made it worse. It was a Wednesday morning when I knew I couldn't do it anymore. Not just the lying, not the pretending, but the living with her. The daily charade of shared coffee, fake smiles, brushing past each other in the hallway like strangers who once meant something. I watched her walk into the kitchen in her robe, humming, flipping through her phone, and I felt nothing. Not hate. Not love. Just the kind of emptiness that makes you feel hollow, like your soul packed its bags and left before your body caught up. She looked up and smiled like she always did. "Morning." I nodded, sipping my coffee. "Morning." And that was it. That's all it took. I couldn't sit across from her at that table one more time and pretend we weren't circling the drain. While she left for work, I stayed home. Called in sick. No excuse, no details, just told my manager I wasn't feeling great. I couldn't concentrate on projects when my own life was crumbling quietly beneath my feet. By noon, I'd pulled every box I could find from the garage. I didn't plan it out in advance. I just started. Her side of the closet empty. Her dresser drawers cleared. Every framed photo of us removed, stacked face down, and packed. Even her favorite mug, the one that said "Future is Female," the one I bought her at a street market in Portland, gone from the shelf, wrapped in newspaper, buried in the bottom of a cardboard cube. I moved like a ghost. No music, no noise. Just the sound of things being folded, sealed, erased. The smell of her perfume still hung in the bedroom, that soft floral note she sprayed on scarves and jackets. I opened the windows. Let the wind carry it out. By the time she got home that night, the guest room was full of boxes. She walked in, dropped her purse on the floor, looked around. What's going on? I didn't say anything at first. Just stood there, wiping dust off my hands, staring at the wall behind her instead of her face. She looked at the boxes again, slower this time. Jack? I nodded toward the guest room. Those are yours. She blinked. What? I packed your stuff. Silence. She let out a laugh, light, nervous, the kind people give when they're waiting for a punchline. Is this a joke? I looked her in the eye. No. And just like that, her expression changed. The humor drained. Her posture straightened. She stepped forward. Jack, can we just talk for a second? I held up a hand. I've already said what I needed to say. You haven't said anything. I said it when I watched you kiss him, I cut in. My voice didn't even rise. That's how she knew it was real. She went pale. Her mouth opened, closed. Opened again. You saw. I nodded. The night you said you were getting groceries. You were at that parking lot. With him. Her hands trembled as she tucked her hair behind her ears. Jack, Don't, I said. She froze. Don't explain. Don't lie. Don't tell me you were confused or lonely or drunk or whatever story you rehearsed for this. It doesn't matter anymore. She looked around the room like she didn't recognize it. Like someone else had come in and rewritten our lives while she was gone. Her voice broke. We can fix this. No, I said, flat and final. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't move. I just watched. Detached. Observing her sadness the way you might watch someone drop a glass of water, noticing the mess but not feeling it. I'll go to therapy, she said, desperation creeping into her voice. We can go together. I'll end it with him. I already have. You ended it because you were caught, I said. That's not remorse. That's damage control. She started to cry then. For real this time. Shoulders shaking, breath hitching. The sound echoed through the room like it was coming from the walls instead of her. I didn't comfort her. Not because I wanted to be cruel, but because I had nothing left to give. I walked to the kitchen, grabbed the manila envelope I'd left on the counter, and placed it on the table between us. She looked at it, confused. Divorce papers, I said. Already filed. I just need your signature. Her lip quivered. You're not even going to try to work through this? I shook my head. You already did the work. You worked me out of your life. She looked at the envelope like it was a live wire. I never wanted it to get this far. You made choices, I said. This is just the consequence. I went to bed that night on the couch, even though our bed was technically still mine. I couldn't stand the thought of lying where she'd once whispered fake I love yous after coming home from his arms. The next day, she was gone when I woke up. No note. No text. Just her boxes in the guest room. Still taped. Still untouched. It took her 4 days to come back for them. I wasn't home when she did. She didn't tell me she was coming. But when I returned from work, they were gone. So was her mug. Her books. Her yoga mat. Every trace of her erased. All that was left was a faint imprint of her on the carpet where her dresser once stood. Like a ghost had decided it was time to move on. I thought I feel rage. I didn't. I thought I feel relief. I didn't. I felt like I'd been emptied out and cleaned like a room stripped of furniture. Hollow, echoing, but ready for something new. I took a week off work. Told my boss I needed personal days. He didn't ask questions. I went to another city. Not far, just enough to be under a different skyline. I booked a small Airbnb with creaky floors and blackout curtains. Walked aimlessly. Ate alone. Read. Slept. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to perform. No forced smiles. No pretending things weren't falling apart. They had fallen apart. And I was still here. When I got back home, I started rearranging furniture. Threw out the old curtains. Replaced our bedspread. Got rid of the photos, not out of spite, just because they didn't feel like mine anymore. I joined a gym. Not because I needed revenge abs or some dramatic rebound arc. I just needed movement. Momentum. Proof that I could still move forward. The people around me, friends, co-workers, started to notice the shift. They asked questions. I told some of them the truth. Told others I'd rather not talk about it. They respected that. What surprised me most wasn't how much I'd lost. It was how much I hadn't realized I'd already given up, my voice, my confidence, my gut instincts, all for the illusion of a happy marriage. But now I had space. Space to breathe. To rebuild. Not to prove anything to her. But because I no longer belong to her betrayal. There's something strange about returning to your old life after it's been torn apart. Everything looks the same, but nothing feels familiar. You drive the same streets. See the same people. Go to the same stores. But inside, you're someone else. Someone cracked open. Not broken, exactly, just permanently changed. I was still adjusting to that version of myself when the invitation came. It was from Aaron, a friend I drifted from during the marriage, not on purpose, just one of those slow fades that happens when your world shrinks to fit a relationship. He sent a casual text. Charity thing Friday night. Free drinks, good music, might even be fun. You in? I almost said no. I wasn't in the mood for small talk, for polite nods and awkward half-smiles. But something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe the need to prove I wasn't completely isolated, told me to go. I ironed a shirt I hadn't worn in months. Shaved. Put on cologne that didn't smell like memories. For the first time in what felt like forever, I walked out the door not as Jack, the guy whose wife cheated, but just Jack. The event was held at a downtown gallery, all exposed brick and soft jazz playing under dim pendant lights. The kind of place where people stand around pretending to understand abstract art while sipping wine that tastes expensive purely because it's hard to pronounce. Aaron greeted me with a bear hug and a whiskey soda. You showed up, he said, grinning. Trying to rejoin the living, I said, half joking. He nodded. Well, good. Tonight's the night. I didn't know what that meant. But as I made my way through the room, smiling politely, engaging in surface-level conversations about art I didn't understand and nonprofits I'd never heard of, I started to feel something shift. Not a full transformation, just a crack in the ice. A glimpse of what it might feel like to live again without the weight of betrayal pressing down on every breath. Then I saw her. I didn't recognize her at first, not fully. Just a flash of dark auburn hair, the curve of a smile that triggered a memory I hadn't accessed in years. She was standing near a painting that looked like a shattered mirror, talking to a group of people in business casual clothes. Something about her posture, the way she held her wineglass like she was more interested in the people than the drink, it all clicked. Leanna. She turned. And when she saw me, her face lit up with something genuine. Not forced. Not polite. Jack, she said, blinking. Wow. I haven't seen you since. What college? Yeah, I said, walking closer. You were in that god-awful poetry class I almost failed. She laughed. Professor Hutchins. That man loved metaphors like they owed him money. We talked. At first, about nothing. Old professors. Friends we'd lost touch with. But the conversation had a flow, a comfort I didn't expect. She didn't ask about Lauren. Didn't prod or try to read between the lines. She just saw me. The me that existed before everything fell apart. At some point, the group around her shifted away and it was just us. Standing near that fractured painting, sipping watered-down wine, laughing about a study group we both ditched senior year. You're different, she said suddenly, tipping her head. Older, I said. She smiled. Not just that. Quieter. In a good way. I've been going through some things, I admitted. She nodded. Haven't we all? It wasn't flirty. It wasn't loaded. It was just honest. And I realized how rare that had become for me. Being seen without being dissected, pitted, or judged. When the event ended, she asked if I wanted to get food. We found a hole-in-the-wall taco place still open nearby and sat at a tiny metal table under a buzzing fluorescent light. No pressure. No expectations. Just two people catching up over carne asada and fountain soda. I told her a bit. Not everything, but enough. She cheated, I said finally, and lied about it. For a long time. Leanna didn't say, I'm sorry. She didn't give me the tired, reflexive sympathies I'd heard from coworkers and acquaintances. Instead, she said, that S**CKs, but you're still standing. That matters. That was the moment something shifted. We started texting after that. Nothing intense. Number 3 a.m. confessions or dramatic declarations. Just small connections. A funny meme. A song she thought I'd like. A random, how's your week? That didn't feel like obligation. Weeks passed, and the shadows Lauren left began to stretch thinner. Then came the restaurant. It wasn't a date exactly. More like, we're both free. Let's grab dinner. We picked a cozy place with warm lighting and a menu that offered comfort food without pretense. As we waited for dessert, I remember thinking how nice it was to sit across from someone without a knot in my stomach. Without suspicion. And that's when I saw her, Lauren, sitting 2 tables over, partially hidden by a column, with another man, not the one from the SUV, someone new, dressed too well, smiling too hard. Our eyes met. Her expression shifted immediately, shock, then confusion, then something else, something raw, almost like jealousy. She looked at Liana, looked at my hand resting near hers, looked at the quiet ease between us. I didn't flinch. I turned back to Liana, smiled, and said something about the key lime pie being overrated. She laughed, reached out and touched my wrist lightly as she spoke, completely unaware, or perhaps indifferent, to the woman watching from across the room. Lauren didn't touch her food. I saw her staring from the corner of my eye, saw the way her posture stiffened, how her fingers clenched around her silverware. The man across from her was talking, animated, but she wasn't listening. She was looking at me, and for the first time since everything unraveled, I didn't care. I didn't feel the urge to prove anything. Didn't feel anger or regret. Just peace. Quiet, steady peace. Later that night, Liana and I parted with a warm hug. No promises, no pressure. Just possibility. I walked home slowly. The air was crisp. The streets quiet. I thought about how Lauren used to hold my hand when we walked home from restaurants. How she used to pretend she wanted forever. And now she was sitting in that same kind of booth with someone new, realizing she had destroyed something real for something temporary. That night I slept soundly. No checking the door. No replaying arguments. No tossing and turning over what could have been. Because Lauren might have thought freedom meant escape.